Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Today we're hearing from a 27-year-old Canadian athlete who started her journey in competing in 2018 and won her pro card at the 2020 Amateur Olympia when she was crowned the overall champion, which is a huge deal. She works as a posing coach for her company Pose with a Pro and through Team Elite Physique. Welcome to the show, Taryn Flanagan. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. I have, like I just expressed to you before we hit record, I've just really loved seeing your journey, and I was excited to finally have you on. And there's so much I love about you. I love your captions. I love the message you share. I love what you represent. So I appreciate you being here to share with us even more about your journey and your insights. And as you know, as a listener, I got to ask if there is something you do or think about right before your heel hits the stage.
So right before my heel hits the stage, I think it's definitely changed over the years. Like when I was doing my first show, I don't really think I necessarily thought of anything. I was just kind of like, okay, this is it. Kind of you just walking out and sort of winging it. But going as I got more serious into competing, and especially for going for the pro card, definitely sort of channeling that confidence and really just sort of taking that deep breath, setting myself up, lifting my chest, kind of making sure I have loose arms. And then what I always tell myself is just, it's yours. Just plain and simple, it's yours. Kind of putting myself in that mindset of confidence and knowing that I just got to go get it.
I love that. And when you give yourself those strong words of encouragement before stepping on stage, it's especially helpful and awesome when you know that you've done what you needed to do. You're competent, you are ready, you are prepared. Mm-hmm. So when you speak those words, it's confirmation of that journey too.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that.
So let's talk about this year, because you've been competing a lot and you just competed, or I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe plans have changed, but I believe it was intended to be your last show of the year before taking some time to grow. So is that still your plan?
Yeah, so I just did the Vancouver Pro Show. That was just on Sunday, this last Sunday. And pretty much my plan going in, because I did my pro debut was the Colorado show. I think it was June. I'm blanking on the day now. June 9th maybe was Colorado. That was my pro debut. A week later, I did Vegas. I jumped in and did a show in Austin, Texas. That one was not planned. I just jumped in right after because I didn't do very well in Vegas. So I was kind of like, okay, one more. And then Vancouver was always sort of the plan, because this is, I grew up in Vancouver. My whole family could come, and it's like the home show. So I was planning on doing that one a little while back. But pretty much after stepping on stage and standing next to a lot of the pros, I saw all my flaws basically right away. So I know I needed to take time off. But then I kind of had to get in that mindset of okay, I just got to do these shows to learn and to get as much experience and feedback as I can, even though I know that I need to grow, and I just don't have the density in the hamstring development, that sort of thing. So I was like, yeah, I'll do Vancouver, take a little bit of time off, but I might go back and just kind of depending how this little break goes, try and do a few more shows come November, December. this year. So we'll kind of see just basically what I can do to improve from now till then.
Love that. Now, is this something that you are excited about and okay with, or are you resisting having to take that time to grow and improve?
No, I'm definitely okay with it. I mean, I just didn't really know what to expect going in. And definitely after the first few shows, I was like, okay, that my training intensity I know is like not where it needs to be. And as soon as I stood up there with like all the pros, that's definitely when I was like, okay, yeah, you can't really, because like what pretty much what won me my pro card, my intensity in the gym and just that approach, I just kind of carried it on. And I was like, okay, well, what won me my pro card is not going to be the thing that's going to like win me a pro show. Like I have to keep improving and keep grinding. And like those girls are working hard. So yeah, definitely it was just like an intensity thing. So I know with myself, I kind of have a hard time pushing and doing that sort of thing. And so now I was a little bit back to the drawing board and I was like, I definitely need to hire a trainer and get my intensity where it needs to be so I can actually start building in the areas that I lack.
Interesting. So, what do you envision to change your intensity? Like, what do you see in your mind when you think about how you're currently training and how you've been training to how you foresee yourself needing to train to make those improvements?
I think with myself, I just always had a hard time pushing. Um, Kind of, I don't know, just sort of like having that intensity where it needs to be when it comes to lifting heavy, just like also having that accountability too. Whereas like when you hire a trainer, it's kind of it takes all the thought process out of it too. Like I do like being able to just show up, have a trainer that pushes me, and they kind of run me through the workout for the hour, and I don't have to think like, well, what exercise am I going to do next,
Mm.
or that sort of thing. Or I'm like, just counting my own reps. I feel like I'll like quit in my head way sooner than what my body can actually handle, and so with my training, it's definitely gotten to that point where I'm like, yeah, I think I just need that accountability of having someone who's going to take me past failure and also kind of just like make it fun for me because I do get a little I always train by myself, so I get a little bit bored. I
Hmm.
think too, and you just do the same things over and over because they work, but yeah, if you're not having someone who's kind of watching your form or just like yeah showing you new things or honestly just taking you past failure is what I think the big difference is.
Yeah, I think training intensity is such an interesting topic because there's so many different like views on it and like what's the best way or what's going to be the most beneficial way. And I think you are the one who knows like what you need as an athlete. And when
Mm-hmm.
you hire a trainer, like they can take you to that level that you knew was possible for you, but you hadn't unlocked yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same thing even happens sometimes when we hire a coach, we're getting a new training program. Like there's something that gets unlocked. There's like potential that's now tapped into.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever felt like you were pushing your limits, or do you feel like this has been a missing piece for a while?
I think this has definitely been a missing piece for a while. I think also too, a lot of it kind of came down to I don't know if I would have considered it ego or just um, I don't know. Like when it comes to training, also too, it's just like having that confidence that I'm doing it correctly, if you know what I mean. So it was almost like when I hired a trainer and all of a sudden I'm like getting my form corrected and then I realized how weak I am in so many areas. It was like you really have to check your ego because it's like, well, really I've been training for like 4 years and then I hired a trainer for a couple sessions and I realized like I know nothing. And so
Mm.
it's like humbling to be like, okay, so I'm doing everything incorrectly almost in a sense and just yeah to be able to like go in and kind of let go and let sort of them take control and guide you is a good feeling for sure too. And so definitely it's been a missing piece for me because I've always just yeah, trained by myself. Always had to kind of learn form from, what you see on Instagram, or just like kind of look in the mirror so you think you're doing it right. Um,
Mhm.
and then with having the intensity of my training having to go up with kind of getting the pro card and, being in the gym 5, 6 days a week, that's when all the little injuries started kind of popping up for me as well, which
Mm.
have just been years of kind of having improper form or little things like that. Like, for example, I had a pretty good um, pelvic tilt, and that's just from like working in heels, posing, all that sort of thing. I'm tilted forward, and so I didn't realize every lower body movement, or even training shoulders, having my pelvis tilted back was like shortening the muscles in my lower back, which was like disengaging my core, which was, even doing like a lunge or something, is like as soon as I had the trainer point that out and I became mindful of like tucking my tailbone and whatever, now these like muscles in my glutes are firing that I never felt before. And I'm just like, oh, not getting like little like pinches in my quads, like just all these like little things are kind of coming up now. And I'm realizing that like what a benefit it really is to have that second set of eyes.
Oh, that's such a great point, because when you do have that second pair of eyes, like you said, there's that accountability piece, there's that push piece, there's that insight. Like there's certain things that maybe you start feeling differently in your body with one small adjustment. Like I
Mm-hmm.
remember I worked with a trainer one time to work on just functional movement and functional, like being able to move my body functionally, not just as a bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
And it really helped me because it opened up so much of my body to then actually improve my lifts. And then
Mm-hmm.
like I noticed too, any trainer that I've come in contact with who maybe provides a piece of advice or insight, or I try something new, as simple as like your toes, like you said, being pointed a different way, or tucking something in or doing something different, like it can make a difference. So do you have a trainer in mind that you're going to be working with?
So I'm gonna try out a few new ones. I live in Kelowna, in BC, and we have a pretty good gym here. So I was just gonna kind of try out a few people that work out of the gym that I go to and see how things go with that, because it definitely has to be in person.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so I'm like a little bit limited because Kelowna is it's pretty decent size, but it's also kind of like a small town. So not versus being somewhere like Vancouver is there's a lot more kind of in-person trainers that I could choose from. So yeah, just gonna find someone here that I can really match with and go from there.
I love that. And is this still going to be under the programming of your coach, Adam, or is this going to be just completely different?
I think maybe a little bit of both. Because Adam, he writes really great programs. And for me specifically, he had me doing um, really do like targeting the areas that he can see as my coach that I need to work on. So kind of taking that and going to my in-person trainer and basically collaborating, showing him what is recommended for me to really be working versus what he can see just from my form, or just like if I'm like weak in certain areas, we can start strengthening that. So a little bit of like collaboration.
Love that. Now, has your approach to nutrition also evolved with your physique or progression in the sport?
I would say it definitely has. I go through phases with my nutrition for sure. I'm definitely like a foodie. I know most bikini girls will tell you the
Mhm.
same thing. Like we all love food, but I just definitely it's cooking and just the Food Network and just all that sort of thing. Again, I'm very passionate when it comes to that. So when it comes to bodybuilding, um, having very basic meals is like hard for me. I can't just eat the same thing every day without like spicing it up a little bit. I love to use like basil and
Mhm.
balsamic vinegar, and just like I love to like mix different flavors, lots of like garlic and onions and all that sort of thing. I love to just really explore. So my nutrition kind of, I guess, in the beginning was a lot more simple, like just the chicken, rice, oats, that sort of thing. And then now I like to get like as creative as possible, but definitely still sticking to whole foods, and I try to eat as organic as possible. And then I'm very mindful of added oils and that sort of thing. I'm very pro like anti-inflammatory foods. I did actually it's like a whole food raw vegan diet, and I did it for 16 weeks after I got my pro card in 2020.
Wow.
Because basically I got my pro card and did not reverse diet. So I put on a bunch of weight, and then I was wanting to do like, I don't know, just some sort of like cleanse. Like I just wanted to like feel good, get the weight off. And then my roommate, she was doing this diet for, it was like an anti-inflammatory meal plan, and she was doing it actually for her autoimmune that she had, because she had psoriasis. So she was trying it out, we lived together, and I was like, yeah, I'll do it too. And so that diet was like intense, but I learned a lot from it. It was basically you just eat raw veggies, and it was like a baked spinach smoothie with like a little bit of fruit for breakfast, and it was like chia pudding, and then like avocados, and just all whole foods. But you didn't cook anything. There was no grains, no dairy, no animal proteins at all. So what I learned from that was that like how good you really do feel when you eat whole foods and like eating raw vegan. Like you really honestly do feel good, but my lifts were not as good, and I had like no energy when it came to trying to like lift weight in the gym and stuff, being like low protein like that. So but what it taught me was that because there's no grains, and it's not like processed, any of the foods that you eat on it. And so after doing that, and then kind of going back to bodybuilder diet a little bit, um, that's when I started paying attention to all the ingredients in everything that I was consuming. So even something simple like my almond milk that I had every day in my coffee, I put it in my smoothies. One day I flipped it around, and there is like sunflower oil, I think it was, in it. Obviously, it was to like make it taste creamy, like it was to like get you to love it, right? Like want to drink more. And then I'm like reading all these chemicals, all these ingredients, and I'm just like, what the heck? And I have it every single day, and it's this inflammatory oil. And so that really like kickstarted my whole food approach when it comes to bodybuilding, I guess, and really just being mindful of gut health and digestion and all those things where the bodybuilding diet definitely lacks, I would say. When it kind of comes to that, there's so many things that we consume because they're like sugar free or low calorie, and then you flip it over and you're just like, what the heck is that? And then meanwhile all these bodybuilders have like IBS and like bad digestion and skin problems and like just all this stuff, but we're like literally drinking chemicals.
So true. And it's interesting because like a lot of the reason we fill our diet with those types of diet foods is because we are restricted in calories and in sometimes in flavor as well. And then also I think a lot of bodybuilders train themselves to volume eat. So then they're not used to a normal level of hunger or fullness. And there's a lack of like understanding hunger cues, embracing them, like the mental side of that too. So I think when focus can be shifted or maybe there's more of a priority on like what makes you personally feel your best, then you're more empowered as a bodybuilder rather than just like doing what everybody else is doing and like like I used to pour Walden Farms and everything, and now I do not
Mm-hmm.
use it. And that doesn't mean that I don't ever incorporate other things, because I definitely do. Like I'm not fully whole foods like you are or anything, but like
Yeah.
I think it's important that we recognize like what's actually making us feel good, what's actually giving longevity to our journey, and like is it an approach that supports our body in everything we're demanding of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like I'm not fully whole food. I'm still human. I'll still drink like a diet pop and stuff like that, but I'm just so mindful of it now whereas before it was same thing, like Walden Farms, all like the sugar-free barbecue sauces. I was actually probably fortunate that I had one prep. I had a really bad reaction to
Mm.
a sugar-free barbecue sauce. I was using it every day, but it was just maybe like a couple tablespoons in one of my meals. But I was using it every day, and slowly I started just getting really bloated. And then it got to a point where it got to a point I got so bloated that I couldn't even go to work. Like it was like I ate my meal and then I would be like down for the whole day. I couldn't go to the gym. Like I was in physical pain,
Wow.
and I was just like, what is going on? And so then my coach is like, okay, we're gonna start cutting things down, narrowing down your diet. Cause I was like, well, maybe it's the fruit in my diet is giving me this like acidic stomach. And so cut out the fruit, cut out the salsa, cut out all like the acid. And then I was just like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I'd eat breakfast, I'd be fine because we just basically have like egg whites. And then I go to have that second meal. It was like a ground chicken, and I put a little bit of barbecue sauce. There was like bell peppers in it. It was great. Ate it immediately, like in so much pain. And I was like, oh, it's the barbecue sauce. So after I cut that out, that was when I realized how sensitive I was to artificial sweetener. And so that's probably also like um, what helps me like stick to being so whole food and like not having a whole bunch of like chemicals and that sort of thing. Cause I'm actually like quite sensitive because that experience of it was like almost a week of just so much pain and I didn't know what it was. It ended up being, yeah, this like barbecue sauce I was using every day. So I was like, oh, okay, that's gotta
Wow.
go. Yeah.
That's so interesting. So you really had to use process of elimination to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It was interesting because I didn't know what it was. So yeah, it just slowly started to like cut out all the things I thought it could be. Cause like I said, it almost felt like an acidic stomach. Like I just
Mhm.
was like not sure where it was coming from. And then, but yeah, basically I would like eat a meal and then just like wait to see how I would feel and then eat the
Mhm.
next meal. And then, yeah, I caught on pretty quickly after I started just basically tracking what I was eating.
I think that's really a good point. And you said that this was inspired by after winning your pro card, you had a rebound or you didn't feel that you reversed properly. So what was going on after winning your pro card, and how are you approaching your now improvement season differently?
So after the pro card, basically the pro card win in 2020, that was the year of COVID. So that was the year where like all the shows got canceled and like anyone who was in prep that year was in prep for like it
I
was like a
was in
whole
that.
year.
It
Yeah,
was
you
a
were in
lot.
that. Oh my gosh. So I think I started prep and my intent, I feel like I started prep in like maybe January or February with the intent to do a June show. And
Mhm.
then because in Canada, we've got three main like pro qualifiers a year. There's two in Toronto, one in June, one in October, and then the Vancouver Pro Show is like usually would be around July. So there's like three opportunities to get your pro card. And so I had the intent to do the June show. And then, yeah, that's the year of COVID. The shows got pushed, canceled, postponed. So started prep in February. It ended up being the shows got pushed like first October. And then it was like, okay, they're going to be in November. end of November. So it was like I literally just prepped for like a whole year. And then because I think I prepped for so long, there probably should have been a point in there where I got a calorie bump and we reversed, but I didn't. So going in to that prep, I ended up having to get really, really low calorie, really high cardio. It was ended up having to be like really extreme to get me the conditioning of where I had to get. And then yeah, my show was supposed to be November, November something. I can't remember, end of November. In Toronto. I go fly there, check into the hotel, and the show cancels like 24 hours out. Yeah, so that was like that one. And they did everything they could. I think they had kind of gotten like the green light. We were all gonna be able to compete, but then by the time we got there, it was just like there's nothing else they could do. So that show got canceled. And then that's why I went for the Amateur Olympia. Like I had no intention to ever do that show, but that one was like 3 weeks later. So then I had to push an extra 3 weeks, kind of past towards like what I thought I would be doing. So basically, by the time I got my pro card, I was so over prep and I just wanted like normal life so bad. And I just craved like balance, right? Like it's what we all say, oh, I just wanted balance. It's like, oh, prep is so extreme. And then I just wanted to have like regular life. And where I live too is kind of like a vacation spot. So there's a lot of like boating and there's just like a lot of things I could do besides go to the gym, basically, living where I do. So as soon as I got my pro card, it was kind of like I did a full flip of a switch, and then I just wanted to like I didn't step into the gym for like 3 months. It was like I just like hated it. I could like there was nothing that was like bringing me back in. So when it came to my reverse diet, it was just like non-existent. And so it also was a little bit tough because with COVID and everything, and also with being in Canada, when I came back from Orlando, I had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So I wasn't allowed to leave my house. And what do you do when you're like at home bored? You eat. So I pretty much did that, just like didn't reverse and then couldn't go to the gym. So I think like being like out of practice and all that sort of thing, I just like lost that passion. So yeah, I don't know. And then it kind of turned into like that cycle where I was almost like embarrassed to go back to the gym because I put on too much weight. So I was like, I don't want to go. Everyone's going to look at me. And I just felt like so uncomfortable in my skin, basically, that it took almost like 5 months for me to like almost have the courage to even like get back and like show my face and be like, yeah, I got fat kind of thing to like get back in there. So then it was like a journey in itself, and it really did show me how much I loved bodybuilding and I love meal prepping and I love like eating healthy and that sort of thing, because when I was chasing what I thought was balance, I was like so depressed, like waking up and just not having like my meal plan, like almost having that like quote unquote freedom of I can eat whatever I want because I'm not in prep. I was like, oh, I'm going to take a year off. So I'm just going to do whatever I want for a year and then have my break and this and that. And that was the most lost that I've like ever felt. Like I was just like, didn't realize how much I actually did crave that structure. So this year with everything, I had to lose like a lot of weight for this prep, over 30 pounds to like get back to like where my stage weight was. So this time just really kind of, I don't know, not going off the rocker, I guess. But a lot of it is like having that mindset of and just remembering like how much I really do love the sport and love like what I do and how it's this is so much more of like my regular life now versus like being in prep.
Yes.
So I think that's a big difference is the mindset just going into this reverse this time is not feeling like, oh, I only have this 1 year that I'm gonna like take off. So I'm gonna like eat everything and do everything. It's more just like, no, it's just like Monday. It's like back at it.
Yes. So really shifting from I'm doing this because I'm on prep and that's what I'm supposed to be doing too. I'm doing this because it's a lifestyle regardless of if I'm on prep.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I love your vulnerability and willingness to share because that cycle is so real for so many competitors of like rebounding or even just weight gain in general and then hiding or feeling like they can't show themselves. And a lot of the times, like, I think that can lead to intimidation of starting a prep because you're thinking about like, oh, I have 30 pounds, 40 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever it is, because sometimes that number can be scary, especially if like you earn, like I know for me personally, I'm like, damn, at my leanest on stage, I was like 111 pounds. Like that's insane. I was like 160 in my improvement season, but like all of it was very intentional weight gain. And then I was thinking about like at the beginning of prep, how it can feel intimidating. And then that's when you know you're not ready to prep. But then there's a moment where something like kind of clicks and you feel like, okay, I can commit to that. And then you're in your prep zone and things are moving really well. And you're reminded like, okay, what do I need to do next time to be better? But I'm wondering if you ever felt intimidated by the idea of starting a prep after having had the experience of like gaining weight and prioritizing things outside of bodybuilding.
Yeah, so a big struggle for me after the pro card actually was I did have a moment where I thought I would never compete again because I had that moment of my prep was so extreme and then my rebound was like so unhealthy with because I was just straight up like binge eating and I'd never done it. Like I feel like I've always sort of binged after like since I did my first show in 2018. I always sort of like binged, but then it was like, you do it for like a couple days, 3, 4 days, and then when you like get back into routine. And so my weight would go to my maintenance weight. I would like shoot right back up there, but then I would just sort of maintain. And I never like got much bigger. And then I'd slowly shred down a little bit. And then I'd be like, okay, yeah, it's time to prep again. So that was like 2018. Same with like 2019. It was like I'd take a couple months off and then I'd be like back at it. 2020 was the first year where I would say like it was that extreme. Like I'd never put on that much weight. It also, I don't know. Yeah. So I think that, um, sorry, I forgot your question.
That's okay. Like if it was ever intimidating to get back in prep and you were saying you
Oh
thought you
yeah.
might not compete again.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that was such a intense prep and such a hard rebound that I was like, I can't continue to do this every single year where I was like, if like this is what it takes to like be a pro to like get this extreme, then I can't do it. Like it was just like so much for me. And then um after, I kind of got back into the routine and I started training again, feeling good. I did that like anti-inflammatory diet. So like the weight started to kind of, fall off just without me having to really grind. Like it was just I started just like feeling good. And then that's when I was like, okay, maybe I want to start looking at my pro debut now and like um the idea of prep like started to seem more appealing. And then that's also what attracted me to Team Elite was because I started to look at Adam's athletes. And when it just came to longevity in the sport, I was like looking and I was like, his approach is, you're not going to do like a 12 or 13 week prep and lose like 30 pounds. His approach is like, hey, if you got 30 pounds to lose, like it's going to be like close to 30 weeks. Like it's like you do it slow.
Yeah.
And you take your time. And then it's really just got to be like a lifestyle. Like it can't be like so extreme going like prep to off season. And so that's what really sort of like drew me in, because that was mainly my struggle was I'm either all in or all out. And I had a hard time really, um, I've always like had a hard time with the reverse for sure. And just like sort of finding that balance, I guess.
Totally. And I think when you've had that experience over and over again and you're finding something new or you're committing to something new, your mind can also go back to like, wow, I've always struggled with this. Like I could struggle again. And sometimes that can be anxiety producing as well, where you're like heading into improvement season. And in the past, this has been really hard. And what if I mess up again, or this all or nothing thinking takes over? And I'm curious what intentions you are setting or like what you're doing to support yourself now that you are entering this phase.
Yes, the biggest lesson I learned was going into an improvement season with no plan or structure. I've always in the past where it's like, as soon as I get into improvement season, I don't send a single check-in. I basically like just like ghost my coach. Like I'm like, okay, I'm done with you now. and then, but that doesn't set you up for success, because when you check in, and say if I've like had a night where I didn't do great, where I was like went out and then I was like binging and I like made myself sick and like fell asleep, woke up, I'm bloated, whatever, it's time to check in. Normally I would just like not, right? But when you send that check in and you basically like hate yourself, like you're like and then you send it, it's just like it takes such a weight off your shoulder, because you're just like, okay, like it's vulnerability, you're like, here I am. And then it's sort of, but it keeps you accountable. So my biggest lesson was not having a plan, because it just, I never set myself up for success. So now my approach is, for one, the environment I'm in, all my friends and my support system, they all are kind of like here for me, and they understand where it's, they're not like waiting for me to be done my diet so we can like go out and eat and drink. Like all my friends really support me, and they eat healthy and they go to the gym and they do that sort of thing. So they like understand that way too. So it's like I have support where it comes to, the accountability of like getting into the gym, that sort of thing. I think also hiring a trainer is going to be huge, because if I hire a trainer and I book the sessions, I have to go. And
Yeah.
and then you have to like keep working out and keep doing what you're doing in order to succeed after. And so, yeah, I think that was like my main fault from past shows, is just like thinking I needed to like take a break. Like, oh, I work so hard, I like don't want to go to the gym this week, I'm gonna take a week off. And then a week turns into 2 or 3 or that sort of thing. And then you almost feel like you're like too far gone. You're like, oh, I put on a bunch of weight, I'm just like too far gone. And it's just, yeah, it's just like a constant struggle. But if you just show up and send the check-in that you don't want to, and you like book the training sessions you don't want to, and whatever, you show up, that you just like feel so good after.
That's a really great point too. Like the whole I'm too far gone mentality. Like I hear that all the time when people reach out to me for the food relationship work that I do or the body image work that I do with competitors. Like they'll be like, am I too far gone? Or I think I'm too far gone, or I'll never get back to where that I was. And a lot of the times, especially in the beginning of an improvement season, when someone feels like they're too far gone, they end up sabotaging even more. But what they don't realize is like their viewpoint on themselves and their behaviors is so skewed. Like this happened to me personally, where I was like, wow, I messed everything up, I'm so far gone. And I looked back, I remember I had a picture of myself where I thought I was too far gone. I had been binging, I had been just feeling like shit about myself. And I was like, damn, girl, you were not even too far. But that one thought turned into a spiral of doubt-driven decision making. And I love that you're talking about, this is what happened, this is what I learned, and here's how I'm preparing for it now. I think that's a courageous thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Honestly, that's why I jumped in to the text of the show, because for me, with with this like binging after shows, it's like not something I've conquered. Like I still struggle with it. So after I did Colorado, so it was like pro debut Colorado, that was fine. I felt like, good headspace. And then I did Vegas. I didn't do very well in Vegas. And just not even so much like with placing, but it was just like overall, like I just was like nervous. I felt like I could have done so much better when it came to like my posing and just everything. So then for Vegas, I like binged. I went out and I just like, yeah, went kind of crazy, went a little overboard, and then made myself just like so sick that the next day I literally woke up and I was like, I need to do another show right now because like I need to like do better. And I'm like, why? Because you know how it is. You just wake up and you're like, why did I do that? Why do I keep doing this? It's such a weird thing because you're so conscious about that, like what you're doing, that you're binging, that you like shouldn't be doing it. And it's like not good for your progress. And it's like your mind is like right, but then it's so compulsive. And so it was like as soon as I woke up the next day, I was like, no, I need to do better. So I looked up and I just like jumped into Texas. I was like, I'm gonna do another one. I'm gonna go and that sort of thing. And I'm just gonna like keep doing these shows until I can kind of like overcome this because I'm just almost like sick of my own of my own I don't know how to explain it, but like my own actions. So I was like, no, yeah, I gotta do another one. And then went off, did that show, and then yeah, kind of came back to Vancouver and yeah, and then now here we are. But it's like I don't know, I still am struggling with it for sure. It's like with the compulsiveness of just being post show and just I don't know, having that thought of like freedom, but I don't know. And then I also kind of like laugh to myself because I'm like, it's so interesting to me that this is something that I'm struggling with, but I choose to be in a sport that challenges that every single time that I like step off stage, I'm like putting myself in the situation to be vulnerable with food and stuff like over and over to basically like test myself. I'm like, it's so interesting because I could just not do the sport and have like a healthy relationship with food. But then I was like, no, I'm just going to compete and I'm just going to keep testing and keep going, keep going.
Well, I just love that you're being so real. And I personally believe that you can compete and have a healthy relationship with food. And I think your constant exposure to that, like being tested, is like revealing more of what might be necessary. And I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but like if you ever need the support, like I am here for you. I've got so many resources too. Like I have a free food relationship coaching series, a post-show blues coaching series, like tons of resources. And I've helped literally hundreds of competitors with this, like where they literally have been able to have that healthy relationship with food, their body, and their goals while competing. And I had Nadia on this show, and she was expressing something similar on the podcast, and she ended up working with me after, and she did so well. Like it was really, really cool. And if that's ever something you need or you want to talk about, like I'm here for you. But I did just want to mention that whether it's to you or to someone listening, like I have a lot of resources. So I don't think it's a struggle that we have to face forever in this sport. I think it's something over time that can improve, but also like now there's some contribution in the industry that can help with that.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's so cool. Because yeah, I didn't realize honestly until recent that that's something you did. I know that you've always like had this podcast, but I didn't realize that that's also what you did. But I think it's so cool, and I love honestly being able to share my experience and that vulnerability because I know just even when it comes to my posing clients, like the girls that I work with, I'm super open with my struggles with food and like what I do post show and like how I've like come back and like little tips and that sort of thing. And the main feedback I get from like all my girls is they're almost like relieved that they're not the only one, because they think like the pros are just perfect and like
Mm-hmm.
no one's struggling, and they think like it's them. And I'm like, no, like you should have, like,
Yeah.
I put on over 30 pounds after my pro card. Like I didn't go to the gym for 3 months. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, because like they just almost put you on a pedestal. And I'm just like, no, 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 I'm human.
I love that. And that's like such a big reason for this show is to show people that like even the most elite competitors have their ups and downs, as I say in the
Mhm.
intro. And
Yeah.
it's very important that we talk about these things. And I think it really drives home the message too that competing in this sport or earning a title or a win or anything like that doesn't protect you from vulnerabilities that already exist. Like the thing that's going to help you through those mental hurdles or vulnerabilities is working on them. Like period.
Yeah.
It's not like attaining something and thinking that'll be the moment where I no longer
Hmm.
it's not like that. If it's there and you
Yeah.
never address it won't be resolved with like an external bandage.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What else have you learned about yourself through bodybuilding? Because it seems like there's been a lot of lessons for you.
Yeah, honestly, bodybuilding has just been, it's been such a journey, and I do love it because of that. I think like, because without bodybuilding, I don't know if I would have dove into like self-development
Yeah.
as much as I really have. And a little bit, I guess, about my journey, about like how I got into competing even was
Yes.
um so in 2000, I think it was 2015 or 2016, my I moved to this small town, and like the first girl I met, we were super close. She decided to do a competition in the small town that I was in. Bodybuilding was big because it's small town, like there's not a lot to do. There was a gym and there was a bar. So you either did one or the other. So the gym community was actually big. And actually there's like a few people from this little town that I was in that they all have their pro cards as well. So it's like we've all sort of like followed
That's
the
so
same path,
cute.
which is cool. Yeah, it's so cool. So my one girlfriend, she decided to do a competition, and I just got to be her support. And she's the one that like basically taught me how to work out. She'd get me to go into the gym, teach me a couple little things. I'd go meet her there, that sort of thing. So throughout her prep, I really got to like be her support. I meet her there, bring her food, this and that. Went to go watch her step on stage, and that's what like had me hooked. Is I watch, all the girls started to come out, and they were just like stunning. And I was just like, wow, it was a pageant, right? I was just like, I
Mhm.
want to do that. And so it was like the glitz and the glam that attracted me. It wasn't even, a lot of girls would be like, oh, I just love the gym and I love to train hard and lift heavy and that sort of thing. And then when it came to competing, the thought of like putting on heels, like that's what was scary to them. For me, it was like, oh, I wanted to do this like beauty pageant, and oh, you have to work out. Okay, I'll start working out. Like, so that it was like kind of opposite for me.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was definitely more like attracted to the glitz of it. So
Hmm.
then I was like, okay, yeah. Um, did my first competition. And I did well for like my first show that I did. It was like different federation back then, so it was like a bit of a smaller show, but I like won both of my shows. And then that was sort of like my first little introduction. So I just didn't even know if I could do well in the sport, because especially I lived in Alberta at the time, and the girls were all like really muscular. So I was like really, really small compared to, so I just never even thought I could go far in the sport, but I did well. And then um, I was kind of just like hooked after that. So that was like 2018 was my first show. And then that's when I found James with Team Atlas. So I joined his team. We did 2019. I did 2 shows with him, won both of those shows. And then he was the first coach to kind of be like, hey, you could go pro. Like you have the potential, you have the look, you can go pro. And no one had ever told me that. I was like, oh, really? So kind of did well with those shows. And then it was kind of just like, I don't know, one of those things. I was like, okay, yeah, it's time to prep again. It's like in Canada how it works is we have like those minimal shows. So it was like basically once a year I would do a show and then you take like, you know, maybe 6 months off and then you like go back at it. So meanwhile, like right before 2020, I just had a lot of life happen. I guess I was just like at that age, I was in a relationship that ended. My dog, he got hit by a car. So I like lost my dog. And then my brother passed away. So
Oh
it was
my
like, and it
God.
was all within like 3 months.
Oh my
And
God.
this was like right at a time where I was like kind of gonna start prep again, but all this stuff was like happening all at once. And um that was when I started diving into like the self-development, like self-help, like um all like audiobooks and like that sort of thing. It was like in the fitness industry. It was like that was the year what was the book called? Oh, The Subtle Art of
Not
Not
giving
Giving
up
a
on.
Fuck. Yeah, yeah, that like orange book.
Yeah.
So that was like big. Like everyone in the fitness industry was talking about it. That book is like what kickstarted a lot of things for me because
Wow.
I knew with myself, like, okay, so I have a choice here where I'm either going to lay down and take it and like go into like a depression and just like, you know, I was basically like alone. And then all this stuff was happening. So I was like, okay, I can either let this happen to me or um, I need to just like dive in. And so I really like dove into, I listened to that book start to finish. And then I went to like Atomic Habits. That was like the
Hmm.
second book I listened to. And then that just like opened these doors for me. And then I was like, bodybuilding was really just there to kind of support all that too. Is like a lot of people like in the fitness industry all have like similar mindsets. And it was just like, yeah, it honestly like saved me from becoming, I think, someone who like really struggled with like a lot of depression or just that sort of thing because it allowed me to like expand my mindset and you know, start practicing gratitude. And that's where like the journaling came from and just everything that's like kind of got me to where I am today. It's like if I hadn't have started bodybuilding, I don't know if it ever really would have opened those doors or if I always would have had more of the negative mindset, like victim mentality.
Wow. So that's interesting. You experienced a lot of loss. You experienced the loss of a relationship. You experienced the significant loss of your brother, your dog. I mean, that's a whole lot to go through in a short period of time. And it would, of course, evoke really strong emotions, and many of which would feel negative as well. So, was that kind of what guided you down the path of self-development, was like wanting to cope with those things, or did going down the self-development route support you and kind of open your eyes to coping with them?
Yeah, I think like a little bit of both. Like it definitely, I just remember like being um at this point in life basically where I was like I just felt like I didn't have any other option other than to start on like that like self-development path basically because I was like it was either yeah, I don't know. That's a good question because yeah, I just felt like I don't know when everything was kind of happening, I was just like, I almost like shut down in a sense where I was like almost, I started to just like block everything out because it was also too like I was busy. Like I was just starting prep. I had to go to work. Like I had to, you know, like life had to go on. And so I was just like, I like didn't have like the time to really like shut down fully where I became, consumed by the emotion, I guess, or like the grieving or like everything that was going on. So I had to be strong. And so I think that being able to listen to like those audiobooks and really start to get a journal and start to like express myself out on paper, it helped me like work through so much like what was going on, but also a lot of like my childhood, and just really like open these doors significantly for me. I think like going kind of through that, I guess it's like my like spiritual awakening basically is like it's when you hit rock bottom in a sense. And so I feel like that's really what it was for me. So but I was just so grateful to have the sport and everything I guess that like comes along with it.
Totally. Like it really does give us that opportunity to look inwards or relieve a lot of the external life things going on, and allows us to show up every single day and be better, or like you said, have routine. Like in some of the
Mm-hmm.
worst times in my life, I was grateful that I had the routine established with bodybuilding because it kept that focus, kept that why really strong.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was so beneficial having that routine. And as the thing is with bodybuilding, like with doing these preps, is we spend so much time alone. And so you really have to spend a lot of time in your own head and like think really just like thinking all your thoughts um and yeah, and so it's for me, yeah, it was such a blessing to be able to kind of have all that and definitely like where I am today with I don't know, sort of how I've like my mindset, I guess, towards the sport and towards everything, how I approach life in general is like all kind of stemmed from, yeah, just really spending all that time on the stair
Yeah,
stepper in my head, just like thinking my thoughts and like then also to being able to like write it up on paper and that sort of thing.
absolutely. And how did going through those series of events over the course of 3 months impact the way that you see or even the way that you live your life?
Well, I definitely appreciate like the little things. Like I have a lot of gratitude for just life in general. And I do believe that everything happens for a reason. And anything that's like meant for you will be. Like a lot of that mentality came from all those experiences in life, because basically it's when something happens, it's you can either let it happen to you or let it happen for you. And so I always have to find like, what is this teaching me? And so that, for example, like losing, like when my dog, for example, like I lost my dog, and then I'm like, well, maybe like I had to find the positive in it. I was like, well, I it's giving me the freedom now to like pursue all these things I want to do, because then I was able to travel and go and um just like, yeah, travel. And I think I like went to the Olympia that year to like go watch. It just like gave me a lot more freedom. Like I always just had to be like, okay, this is giving me the chance to like pursue more, because I don't have to be, taking care of my pet or just like little things like
Hmm.
that. And then with, my brother, it really just taught me like, the value of family and
Yeah.
what really is important. Same thing with like COVID, right? Like I think COVID, like for me, going through that whole experience, it really taught me like what's important and what you really like need in life. So when it comes to like, I don't know, like materialistic things or stuff like that, and then all of a sudden you're trapped in your house for a month and you like look at all your stuff and you're like, I don't need any of this to be happy, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, all those kind of like little things have taught me a lot, and it always just kind of comes back to um what's like really important.
Absolutely. I think that's a common takeaway from loss of any sort, or even the ending of things, is like, can we focus on a new beginning or a new perspective or find the lesson? Like you said, that's so important. And when we do, it means that we've allowed ourselves to experience the emotion. I think it's when we don't allow ourselves to experience the emotion that we actually miss out on the lesson that's meant for us from that experience, no matter how challenging it is.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And it relates to like competing as well too, because I could have done my pro debut and like done these couple shows, and because I didn't place super well, I could have basically like hung up the heels and been like, well, it's not really for me. But instead it's like made me so much more inspired to like just like get to work, because I'm like, I learned so much. And so it was like, of course it was hard. And honestly, after Texas, I like didn't place well. So then going into the Vancouver show, I was a little bit like, like didn't even want to do it, because I was like, oh, at this point, am I just like embarrassing myself? But then I had to be like, no, like I learned, like I'm learning so much every single time
Yeah.
I'm stepping on stage. I'm getting better, and the reason why I wanted to do all these shows is because I was like, I just hate that feeling of being so anxious on show day, where it's like I'm stressed out about like, oh, did I forget my button, or like what time is my tan? And I just was like, I was like flustered, and I was like, I just want to do a bunch of shows, and then when it's like time to step on stage, I just want to be like calm. It's like, oh yeah, I've
Yeah.
done so many shows. This is just like easy for me. And I'm like, and I was in America, so I was staying in Vegas for a while. So that was my mindset too, as I was like, I just want to do as many shows as I can while I'm here, because in Canada we only have like two or three a year that I could do. So I'm like, while I'm here, I'm just really gonna utilize this time and just do as many shows as I can, even though I'm not placing super well. Um, but it definitely solidified what I need to do to be competitive. So
Mhm.
like what I need to work on. So
That's really cool. Now, what are your ultimate goals in this sport?
my ultimate goals, I definitely want to compete for a couple years. I'm 27, so
Mhm.
my mindset around it was compete for a couple years, and then maybe closer to 30, think about taking some time off, and I don't know, maybe have a family or do something along those lines. But
Mhm.
for now, just really, I don't know, for now, really just like exploring like how far I can go, and yeah, just like having fun and just enjoying it. Honestly, it brings me so much joy, and I love having a goal and being able to like work towards something and being in prep. I do love the whole journey and the whole process of it. um so yeah, just kind of keep at it and see what comes from it, and yeah, I don't have any like super specific plans, I guess, but I do want to go to the Olympia, and I do want to, um, yeah, pretty much go as like far in the sport as I can.
Heck yeah. Love that. So I want to shift focus to your posing and work as a posing coach. And
Hmm.
let's start with how you personally learned to pose and what you took away from your own trials and errors to support you in coaching others to pose their best.
Yeah. Okay. So for my first show, um, I think I took like, it was just so funny how
Mhm.
in 2018, how things have changed, and like how competitive the sport is now, like the
Yeah.
level of athletes at the shows now. Because at these regional shows, these girls like look like pros, and they're posing so well. And I'm
Yes.
just like, okay. In 2018, I think I took 3 lessons, and I just was like, I'm gonna wing it. And I literally like went out there, and I just was like, you just like hit your front, but like it's so cringe. When I look back, I'm like, oh, it's so cringe. Um, and so, the beginning, like the first year, it was just like kind of fun, I guess. I didn't even know how to like hit my back pose. I just like guessed. And then 2018, 2019, when I was with Team Atlas, that was when I worked with Angeline. So she
Yeah.
taught me my whole foundation. I worked with her lots over like those 2 years. And so her style, honestly, is what's influenced my style. The way that I teach posing, she's got like a very refined and like she poses like, yeah, I don't know, just very, very like refined, and it's like simple and it's flowy.
Yeah.
So that's what I loved, and that's how I like to teach as well. Like it's a very basic routine, like how I would say if I got a girl, she's never posed or has maybe done like a show and just like not super confident in a routine, that sort of thing. I just like bring them right back to the basics. So yeah, front pose, and then it's sort of just the simple transition, front pose, back pose, turn back on, wave, see you later. But I don't do a lot of the like fancy steps until I've worked with the client for a while, or if they have more experience, if they are a little bit more advanced, or just depending on the shape as well. Your shape, certain girls like look really good in certain poses, like this, like stepping back, or certain like angling of the feet and that sort of thing. It is a little bit subjective to who I'm working with, but basically that's my method. And then for myself with posing, um, that was basically like my style too, is just like a very flowy and refined sort of. I don't do anything like super sassy or like super like energetic. It's just very like refined. And then um, um, yeah, and then with the walk and that sort of thing, that was like, I think the main feedback that I got when I was it was like, yeah, the 2019 when I did those shows. That was like my main feedback, was that my walk needed a lot of improvement. So um just kind of like working on that. But yeah.
And you brought up something that I was actually hoping to talk to you about, which is when you're constructing a routine, it's like how much of it is about flow and how much of it is about the physique. And it sounds like it's about the experience of the athlete, the comfort of the athlete, where they're at as well. And when you're talking about looking at someone's physique, like, are there particular things that you're looking for, and are there particular things that you do? Maybe you could give us an example of a physique you saw and like one posing tweak that helped to bring it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of it is just structure. So if you're more lower body dominant, or if you have bigger quads, like that's a big one, is if where you're at in the scale of your quad dominance. So some girls, like for myself, for example, I don't have very big defined quads, and so I can stand a little more sideways and like show a lot more glute. Um, and then I also have a bit of a thicker waist, and so I have to really like angle myself more to the side to like give my best look. Whereas some girls are more quad dominant and they have like really tiny little waists. And so just like depending on your structure, that will really depend on front pose and then back pose as well. And then when it comes to overall like flow and routine, you can kind of just, I don't know, after you've worked with someone a couple times, you can start to see the personality come out. And so there's some are a little more bouncy or a little more like sassy, some are more sort of that like more refined like dancer, like you can tell like, oh, if they had a dance background or that sort of thing, like the way they'll like move their hands or like point their toes or that sort of thing. I can like see it, like, okay, yeah, you definitely danced as a kid and that sort of thing. And so you can kind of cater routines like that. And then there's some there's some girls that are like have never worn heels. And so then they like put them on and they're like, I don't even know how to walk. And
Yeah,
so, you know,
that was
someone
me.
like that, I'm not gonna have the yeah. And that's the most fun for me, like those big transformations. I had a woman come to me and she worked basically in like steel toe boots and she worked like a hard job, that sort of thing. And she just was like, I never wear heels. And so it was so out of her comfort zone. And by the end of our time together, like by the time she stepped on stage, she just was like so confident and she just rocked it. And I was like, that made me so proud to know that like I kind of like got her there from like she was so nervous to even put the heels on. She was like couldn't walk or any of it. So yeah, that was like really rewarding for me. But you know, someone like that, obviously I'm not going to give them like um all these like fancy steps that are going to be like a lot harder because that would just be overwhelming. So I basically start the everyone off with the super basic routine, and then as they master that, then we'll start adding in little poses that like just really flatter their physique or little steps that are a little bit different, or how to start bringing in the personality, when to look up, when to look down, when to move your hair. Yeah, all like the little things. But um, it takes time, honestly, because I'll work with someone for sometimes it takes like 6 weeks until we can even start working on like, okay, now we're going to start moving our hands and
And
adding
that's
flow into
even
the hands.
fast for a
Yeah,
lot
and
of
it's
people
like,
who are new.
yeah, totally. Because it's about how much work you put in. But
Yeah.
I kind of say too, I'm like, it took me 3 years realistically to like get good at posing because I didn't practice every single day for like 20 minutes a day for 3 years. Like I just, you know, it would be
Exactly.
like when I did my check-ins, I'd be like, okay, I do like 6 rounds. Like as I'm doing my check-in, I'm like, okay, I nailed it. That was my practice. And so for me to get to my level, that it took 3 years of me competing it, and my routine never changed. The routine that Angeline made me in 2019, that was the routine that won me my pro card in 2020. Like, you never changed a thing. I just had to keep working it and perfecting it, and that's how long it took.
Totally. And this might be a strange random question, but it's something I was curious about. Like, do you think there's any posing trends right now, like that are emerging, or are already in play that are eventually going to be looked back on and maybe cringed at?
Yes. Like, yes.
I'm like, come on, tell us,
Yes.
because I want to have this conversation.
Like touching the glutes going into back pose.
Mhm.
So I just think it's cringe because done subtly, I think it could work. And depending on the personality and depending on the flow of the whole routine, like, you know what I mean when I say like touching the glutes going into the
The
back
Laura
pose.
Lee,
Yeah,
she can
exactly.
pull it
So
off.
she can pull it off, but she does it subtle. And so
Very
the issue is
subtle.
that it's very subtle, and like it's almost like she's not even really making contact with the skin. Like it's super subtle. And the thing with her is that her glutes are so big that when she's going into her back pose, like she's not doing this like the big hip sway. Like she's not
Right.
really moving. She's kind of just like going front to back. So she's got to add in a little something. So for her, it's kind of like the hands come into play because she's not like doing this huge hip sway like you'll see other girls do. So, you know, people will see that, and then now that's trending. It's just getting choppier and choppier, and then especially like at a more regional level, you don't have as much time. So like everyone's just like rushed, and so that is one thing because now it's just full on like almost starting at the knees and just like touching like all the way up.
Yep.
So it's more of like a sensual, like sexy kind of posing trend. So I think eventually that will become too much, and then it will probably fade out. And I don't know what it will fade into. I'm curious, but that is just one thing I have noticed. But it's because she's, a lot of eyes are on her right now. So every little thing she's doing, everyone wants to do. So yeah, that is because
Yeah.
when it was when Issa, for example, won, that was like everyone was popping their lats out, trying to have like big lats, pulling
Exactly.
the shop down, right? And
Great
so
example.
yeah, and so that was the trend. And then the judges had to be like, hey, we didn't want lats. She
Yeah.
just, she was the best that day. And so she won. It just so happened that she's got big lats, right? And so then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, all these girls, yeah, hitting back day 4 days a week,
Yeah, it's
like
true.
puffing these lats out, right? And so, yeah, the trends will always, I think, like come and go. But it's interesting. And I love that it changes almost show to show. Like you'll see a trend, and then by the time you're like, oh, everyone's doing that, there's like already something in the works that's like coming down the line, which is cool. Like how fast bikini it evolves. I
Yeah.
think is like really interesting because you really have to study bikini, and if you don't, you'll miss it. And all of a sudden, everyone will
Mhm.
be doing something, and you're like, where did that come from?
Yes, like study it, predict it, be innovative,
Yeah,
be willing to learn and try things.
yeah. I think it's cool how it's almost like show to show that bikini is evolving. I'm not sure if like, you know, like bodybuilding or like classic or like if the other classes are like that quick for trends or if they have much for trends, but I just think it's really interesting how bikini is like that.
Yeah, I think we saw it a lot with classic and see it a lot with classic, but I do think bikini like takes the cake for that. There's
Hmm.
so many things that we have to do to set ourselves apart, and like the judging criteria is much more difficult, I think, to hit because it's not like a one, not that the other ones are not difficult, but it's just not as clear cut. um
Hmm.
but yeah, I appreciate you answering that question because I find that interesting. There's certain things that I'll see now and I'm like, I don't think I'd ever do that because I don't see that lasting. um I was thinking of that one, and then I was thinking of like starting your pose, like walking on stage and immediately showing the glutes. I'm like, don't, doesn't make sense. I don't like that very
I
much.
don't know if I've ever seen that. I've like heard that before about I think someone like posted like, oh, anything that you or like a hard no for you proposing, and then I've like read that someone say, oh, walking on and showing glutes first. I don't think I've ever seen it. But
Yeah,
I would think, yeah, no, I would think no. You'd hit your front pose first. At
right. Like you're seeing
least
them
say
for the first
hi.
time. Exactly. Thank you. Let's warm up a little bit. Get the crowd going, okay?
Just like a cat. You just walk
Yes.
up.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
I would love to get your best advice for people who have never competed before but would like to, and then your best advice for those on their road to pro.
Yes. Okay. So for girls that have never competed before, I would say just really do your research, hire a good coach, and really invest in yourself. I think it's really important to take the time, like now, especially, there's so much free information out there, and you can really study these coaches that are on the internet. Whereas, like, back when I was competing, like my first show at 2018, you kind of just went with like people who were like local to you, people who were like close, and there wasn't a whole lot like on Instagram, even for like posing, for example. Like I couldn't go on YouTube and find a posing routine that wasn't like 5 years old and like the wrong
Mhm.
federation. But now it's like all this information is so easily accessible, and so that would be my best advice is to really just do your research, hire a good coach, be prepared to invest and invest in yourself. not just financially, but with time, because it takes so much time in the gym, prepping, food, just like taking yourself out of social situations. So if it's not already a lifestyle for you, it's just going to be so much harder. So that would be my best advice, but that's not the approach I took. I just like went for it. Um, and I learned a lot along the way, but if I had done more research, I guess, and just lived more of the bodybuilding lifestyle before I ever started, I think it definitely would have been a lot easier for me. And then just kind of have realistic expectations for yourself when it comes to your shows and comes to competing. It's like I feel like everyone sometimes is in a rush to do a show or a prep where they'll think like, 12 weeks, 13 weeks, 16 weeks, and if they have like a big transformation to do. So it's like just be realistic with what your goals are and like what you can accomplish in the time frame that you're setting out. And then for advice for girls on the road to pro, I would say just kind of be mindful that your time will come. You can't rush it. And, anything that's meant for you will be. So when it comes to, doing these shows and like show after show, if you're like not getting that pro card, you're like feeling really discouraged, just kind of remember that, yeah, your time will come and everything kind of happens for a reason.
Love that advice. And I do appreciate your time and willingness to be so open. And I want everyone to be able to continue to follow your journey and connect with you and maybe even work with you. So how could they do that?
Yeah, so Instagram would definitely be the best. My Instagram is Taryn It Up. There's an underscore in there after the it. And yeah, that's kind of my main social there is Instagram.
Awesome. I'm going to put that in the show notes page. You guys listening, that's always on celestial.fit/podcast. If you're listening right away, Taryn's episode is going to be at the top of the page. If you're listening in the future, scroll down to the category section. It's all alphabetized there. You're not only going to see the links to connect, but you're also going to see a full breakdown of episode timestamps. So if you want to go back and listen to particular parts, you can. You'll see a full summary of topics covered so you can share it with your teammates and let them know why they need to listen to this. And then, of course, there's going to be a summary of the episode there too. So you can just kind of catch a glimpse into this episode or previous ones and see what you're going to be in for. I do appreciate all of you guys listening. And Taryn, thank you again for your time today.
Yes, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Yeah, it totally was. And I hope that you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode.